My son had the most beautiful laugh. The kind that made strangers in grocery stores turn around and smile without even knowing why. He was 9 years old, gap-toothed, obsessed with dinosaurs, and he trusted every single person in our family completely. That trust was the most precious thing I had ever watched grow in another human being. And my brother destroyed it in under 3 minutes, in front of 22 people, at our father's 70th birthday party. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Relax, Rachel. Nobody can take a joke anymore. I want you to remember that line. Because everything that happened after every decision I made, every bridge I burned, every person who called me dramatic or vindictive or cold, it all comes back to that one sentence. Nobody can take a joke anymore. My name is Rachel. I'm 31 years old. I'm a middle school art teacher, and I have been raising my son Ethan on my own since he was 2, when his father decided fatherhood wasn't something he was built for. It hasn't been easy. But Ethan is the funniest, most emotionally intelligent kid I have ever met, and I say that as someone who spends 6 hours a day with other people's children. He feels things deeply. He always has. When he was 6, he cried at a nature documentary because a baby elephant was separated from its herd. When he was 8, he started writing in a journal because, he told me very seriously, "Mom, sometimes my feelings are too big for just my brain." I bought him that journal. A dark green hardcover with a little brass latch. His name was written on the inside cover in his own handwriting, crooked and proud. He kept it in the front pocket of his backpack because he wanted it close to him. He wrote in it almost every night. My brother Derek is 38, 7 years older than me, and in some ways it feels like 7 decades. He married his wife Lisa about 6 years ago, and they have a daughter, Mia, who just turned 13. Derek works in real estate, does well enough, drives a truck that costs more than my annual salary, and has spent most of our adult lives being consistently cruel in ways that are just small enough to deny. A comment about my apartment being cozy in a tone that means cramped. A question about whether I'm still doing the teaching thing at every single holiday gathering. A habit of interrupting me mid-sentence and then acting confused when I stop talking. Nothing you could point to individually and call abuse. But patterns have a weight that individual incidents don't, and I had been carrying that weight for years. Our father turned 70 in June. My mom had been planning the party for months, rented out the backyard of my aunt's house in Connecticut, ordered a custom cake, invited everyone from my dad's old bowling league, his coworkers, his neighbors, both sides of the family. It was a real celebration. My dad is a good man, the kind who remembers everyone's birthday and still sends cards in the mail, and he deserved every bit of it. Ethan was excited. He loved my dad more than almost anyone on earth. The week before the party, he told me he was writing something in his journal for Grandpa observations, he called them, very solemnly, about why Grandpa is the best person. He worked on it for 3 evenings straight, cross-legged on his bed with his tongue between his teeth. We drove up on a Saturday morning. The backyard was already full of people by the time we arrived, and Ethan immediately ran to my dad and wrapped both arms around his waist. My dad picked him up even though Ethan is frankly getting too big for that, and neither of them cared at all. The first few hours were fine. Better than fine, actually. My mom had made my dad's favorite foods, the weather was perfect, the bowling league guys were telling loud stories, and for once Derek and I were orbiting each other at a comfortable enough distance that I almost relaxed. Lisa was chatting with my aunt near the dessert table. Mia was on her phone in a lawn chair, which is just 13, so I didn't think anything of it. Ethan had left his backpack inside on the kitchen table. He did that sometimes, carried it everywhere and then set it down the moment he felt comfortable somewhere. I noticed it when I went in to get more ice, but I didn't think anything of it either. He was outside, happy, chasing my dad's neighbor's dog around the yard. I should have thought something of it. About 2 hours into the party, I was standing near the back fence talking to my cousin when I heard Derek's voice rise above the crowd. Not shouting just that particular performance volume he uses when he wants an audience but wants to be able to claim he wasn't trying to have one. "Hey everyone," he said, "listen to this." I turned around. Derek was standing near the center of the yard, holding something. It took me a second to recognize what it was, because it was the last thing I expected to see in his hands. It was Ethan's journal. The green one, with the brass latch. The latch was open. "I found this inside," Derek said, grinning. "And I have to say, this kid is something else." I started moving toward him immediately, but the yard was full of people and there were tables and chairs in the way, and Derek had already started reading. He read from my son's journal out loud, to 22 people. He did the voice, this exaggerated, childish voice, like a comedian doing an impression of a little kid. He read the entry about Ethan being scared that I worked too hard and might get sick. He read the entry about a boy at school who had called Ethan weird, and how Ethan had written, in his 9-year-old handwriting, "I think maybe weird is okay if weird means you notice things other people don't." He read the entry about missing his dad, which Ethan had never even read to me, which I didn't know existed, which was private in the way that only a child's unspoken grief can be private. People laughed. Not everyone. I want to be fair about that. My cousin had her hand over her mouth and wasn't laughing. My Uncle Ben looked like he'd been slapped. But enough people laughed. Enough people thought it was a funny bit, a cute kid moment, a harmless piece of family entertainment. I found Ethan in the crowd before Derek even finished the second entry. My son was standing completely still near the garden beds at the edge of the yard, and his face was a thing I will never fully describe to another person. He had heard everything. He knew, at 9 years old, what it meant that his private words were being performed for a crowd. He didn't cry. He just stood there and went very, very quiet, the way children do when they are trying to figure out if they are safe. I walked straight to Derek, and I took the journal out of his hands. I didn't say anything to him. I couldn't, not with 22 people watching, and my son 10 feet away. I walked back to Ethan, crouched down, and put the journal in his hands and my arms around his shoulders, and I felt him start to shake a little. "Let's go inside," I said. "Okay," he whispered. Behind us, I heard Derek say it. Casual, unbothered, a little amused. "Relax, Rachel, nobody can take a joke anymore." And my father, my good, kind, wonderful father who I love, said, in a gentle voice, "Let's not make a scene at the party, sweetheart." I took Ethan inside. I sat with him in the kitchen for a long time. He didn't want to talk, and I didn't make him. I just sat with him and let him be wherever he was. After a while, he said, "Why did Uncle Derek read my journal?" I told him the truth. I said I didn't know, and that it was wrong, and that nothing he wrote was something to be ashamed of. He nodded. Then he said, "The part about missing Dad, can we not talk about that part?" I said we didn't have to talk about any part of it, ever, unless he wanted to. He nodded again. Then he asked if we could leave. We left. I went out to the yard, hugged my father, told him I loved him and happy birthday, and said Ethan wasn't feeling well. My dad looked at me with an expression that said he understood more than he was letting on, but he also let me walk away with it, and some part of me filed that away too. I said nothing to Derek. I said nothing to Lisa. I collected our things from inside, and Ethan and I got in the car and drove the 2.5 hours home mostly in silence, with one stop for gas station snacks because Ethan asked quietly if we could. That night I put him to bed, and I sat in the hallway outside his door until I heard his breathing even out. Then I went to my kitchen table, and I sat there for a long time. I am a person who tends to process slowly. I've always been that way. In the immediate aftermath of something painful, I go quiet and careful. Like I'm walking on ice and testing each step. The rage comes later, and when it comes, it is very clear. By midnight, I was clear. Derek had gone into my son's bag, a child's backpack, and removed a private journal with a latch on it, a journal that was obviously personal, obviously not his. He had read it. He had carried it outside to an audience. He had performed my son's private grief and private fears and private love for a crowd of people, in a funny voice for laughs. He had not asked. He had not hesitated. He had not, in the moment after I took the journal and walked away, shown a single second of remorse. He had made a joke of it. And my father had asked me not to make a scene. I took photographs of every page Derek had read from, and a few he hadn't gotten to. I'm not entirely sure why. Instinct, maybe. The same instinct that makes you screenshot a text message you have a bad feeling about. I saved them to 2 places. Then I opened my laptop and I wrote out what had happened. Not for anyone, just for me. I wrote it exactly as it had occurred, start to finish, with the details of what Derek had read and how he had read it, and what Ethan's face had looked like and what my father had said. Writing has always been how I understand things. When I finished, it was 2:30 in the morning, and I felt something settle in my chest. The next morning, Ethan seemed okay. Not fine. Ethan has never in his life described himself as fine, because he is constitutionally allergic to imprecision, but okay. He ate cereal and watched a dinosaur documentary, and came to find me in my bedroom around noon, and sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Mom, I've been thinking about what happened." "Me too," I said. I think what Uncle Derek did was really mean, he said. Like, not funny mean. Actually mean. I told him he was right. Are you going to do something about it? He asked. I told him I was still figuring out what. He nodded. Okay. I just wanted to say that I think you should. Because if you don't, he'll think it was okay. He paused. That's what you always tell me about stuff at school. That if I let things go without saying anything, the other person learns the wrong lesson. I looked at my son for a long moment. You're right, I said. I know, he said, and went back to his documentary. My phone had been ringing since that morning. I had let everything go to voicemail. My mom had called twice. My aunt had called. 2 cousins had texted. And Derek had called once, which was actually more than I expected, and had left no voicemail, which was exactly what I expected. The call I was not prepared for came at 2 in the afternoon. I was folding laundry when my mom's name appeared on my screen again. And this time something made me pick up. She didn't ask how Ethan was. She didn't say she was sorry about what happened. She said, Rachel, I need you to promise me you're not going to post anything about this online. I stopped folding. What? Your brother is worried. He said you took pictures of the journal pages, and he thinks he's worried about his reputation. With clients. You know how things can spread. I stood in my laundry room for a moment, holding a dish towel. Mom, I said. Ethan's private journal was read out loud to the entire party, including the part where he writes about missing his father. Did Derek tell you that part? It was a mistake, she said. He didn't realize how sensitive Ethan is. That word, sensitive. The same word they had been using about me for 31 years. Too sensitive. Ethan's too sensitive. Said as though feeling things correctly is a character flaw. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet, I said. But I need you to understand that I'm not making any promises to protect Derek from consequences right now. My priority is Ethan. I'm not asking you to protect Derek, she said, and her voice had shifted into something cooler, something careful. I'm asking you to think about the family, about keeping things private. You know how these things get out of hand. The family, I repeated. Derek read Ethan's private journal to the family. In front of the family. That's where we are. That's what happened. She was quiet. Mom, I said, did Dad put you up to calling me? She didn't answer that, which was its own kind of answer. I love you, I said. I'll talk to you soon. And I hung up. Here is the thing I want to say clearly, because I know how this sounds to some people. I did not post anything to expose my brother. I did not post anything to damage his career or his marriage or his standing in the family. I posted because I was a 31-year-old woman sitting at her kitchen table with a 9-year-old's grief in her hands, and I didn't know what else to do with it, and writing has always been how I survive things. I wrote it the way I would write anything honestly, with detail, without naming anyone. I posted it to a small community I've been part of for a couple of years, a forum for single parents. I didn't tag anyone, I didn't use last names. I just told the story of what happened at a birthday party, and asked if anyone had been in a situation like this, and what they had done. Within 48 hours, the post had thousands of responses. I read almost all of them. Most were people who recognized what had happened for what it was, not a prank, not a joke that went too far, but a deliberate act of humiliation against a child, performed for an audience, by an adult who had sought out a private document and weaponized it. Several people pointed out that going through a child's bag and removing a private journal with a latch is not an accident. It is a choice. Several more pointed out that continuing to read after the child's mother approached was also a choice. And many people said some version of what Ethan himself had said. If there are no consequences, the other person learns the wrong lesson. I did not name my brother. I did not have to. Derek knew what I had written, because Derek knew what had happened, and Derek knew the details I would use. He texted me on the 3rd day. The message was 4 words. Really mature, Rachel. Wow. I screenshot it and added it to the folder. 2 weeks after the party, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me, and the voice on the other end of the line was young and careful and said, Hi, this is Mia. Uncle, this is Derek's daughter. I hadn't expected that. Hi, Mia, I said. I just wanted to call because... She stopped. Started again. I was there, at the party, and I held the journal while my dad read it. He asked me to hold it and keep it open to the right page, and I did, and I thought it was going to be like a funny thing, but then it wasn't, and Ethan's face. She stopped again. I'm really sorry. I should have given it back. I should have said no. Mia is 13. I keep coming back to that. 13 years old, calling an adult she doesn't know well to say she was sorry because she understood something at 13 that her father has not understood at 38. I told her I appreciated her calling. I told her that it took courage. I told her that knowing the right thing and doing the right thing are two different skills, and she had used both of them today, and that mattered. She cried a little. I let her. Before she hung up, she said, "Can you tell Ethan I'm sorry too? Like, actually him?" I told her I would. When I told Ethan about the call, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "So she knew it was wrong while it was happening?" "I think so," I said. He thought about it. "That's kind of sadder than if she didn't know," he said, "because then she had to feel bad about it this whole time." I looked at my son. "Yeah," I said. "I think that's exactly right. Derek lost 2 clients that month. I don't know the details. I heard it through my cousin, who heard it from my aunt. Apparently some people in his professional network had seen enough of the post to recognize the situation, even without the names. I don't know if that's justice or collateral damage or both. I know that I didn't orchestrate it. I know that I told a true story with no names attached, and that the consequences of the story were born from the story itself. My mother called me again 6 weeks after the party. This time she asked how Ethan was. She apologized not for what Derek did, but for the call she had made asking me to protect him. She said she had been scared of conflict and that she had made the wrong choice. It wasn't everything I needed from her. But it was something real, and I said thank you, and I meant it. My father and I had a longer conversation around the same time. He told me he was sorry he'd asked me not to make a scene. He said he'd been so focused on the party, on not wanting anything to be ruined, and that he'd made the wrong call. He said, "I should have stood up for Ethan. He's my grandson and I should have said something and I didn't, and I'm sorry." My father is not a man who apologizes easily, not because he's proud, but because he genuinely tries hard enough that he doesn't often have to. Hearing him say it meant something. I have not spoken to Derek since the party. Not one word. He has not reached out with anything other than that single 4-word text. I don't know if he thinks he was right, or if he's ashamed, or if he's waiting for me to make the first move. What I know is that I am not moving first, not this time, not for this. If Derek ever wants to have a real conversation about what he did and why, and what it cost my son, I will have that conversation. The door is not locked from my side, but it is not open, either. Ethan got a new journal. He picked it out himself. This one is red, and it has a much more complicated latch, and he keeps it under his mattress now instead of in his backpack. He told me that's a better hiding spot. He's probably right. He also told me, about 2 months after the party, that he'd written something new in it. He didn't tell me what it said, and I didn't ask. But he smiled when he mentioned it, and I recognized the smile. It's the one he gets when he's put something into words that has been floating around wordlessly, and the finding feels good. A few weeks after that, he came home from school and dropped his bag by the door and said, "Mom, there's a new kid in my class and he's pretty quiet and I think he might be like me." I told him weird is okay if weird means you notice things other people don't. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was reporting the weather. And then he went to the kitchen to get a snack. I stood in the hallway and I pressed my fingers over my mouth, and I took a breath. Derek read those words to make people laugh. He read them in a funny voice, to a crowd, because he thought they were small. He thought my son was small. He thought the things that moved through my son's mind at 9 years old, the observations and fears and careful private loves, were material, a bit, something to perform. He was wrong about that. He was so completely, irreversibly wrong. And I think, somewhere in the part of himself he can't post about or perform for clients or dismiss with a 4-word text, he knows it. Nobody can take a joke anymore. I think what he means is, nobody will stay quiet anymore. Nobody will absorb cruelty and call it humor to keep the peace. Nobody will watch their child's privacy be cracked open and handed to a crowd and let it go because it's a family party and let's not make a scene. He's right. I can't take that joke. I won't. And neither, for the record, will my son.